Welcome everybody to our COVID discussion 2023, the aftermath. This is the seventh part in a series of COVID webinars or truth talks that I have made in the last 3 years, and it's quite overwhelming, to be honest with you. I have a little bit of a hard time deciding where to start. This is why I wanted you guys to submit questions, and it was no surprise to me. All questions, every single one, was about how to reverse or recover the potential or possible adverse reactions to the COVID vaccine. And so this is where I've put the emphasis here for this aftermath discussion, but I really want to ask you guys to ask other questions. I'm revisiting some of the controversies or some of these topics that we've talked about in previous webinars about COVID, and it will be very interesting for us to see how things are looking like today and how we perceived them back then. And of course, also, the sad topic of, having been right. And I told you so. So let's start off with, if you want to revisit those previous webinars, then please feel free to go to my YouTube channel or visit the Sacred Self-Healing Forum. They're all listed there. And I don't know if you guys all know this, there's not a lot of response, but I have been posting hundreds and hundreds of studies, press releases, etc., throughout the last 3 years, just about the COVID topic. And it's like a time capsule in a way. When I talk to people today, it's like they forgot. They forgot what was last year, a year ago or 6 months ago. How about you guys? Anybody and similar experiences? It's like nobody really wants to talk about it. Anybody similar experiences? Or that is really, really difficult for people to remember? We're all from different countries with different. No, it's okay, Cindy. Just come on, come on. I'm just bridging the time here to break the ice.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, let us know when you're sharing. Let us know what country you're from, just so, or state, if it's the United States, just so that we have a little bit of an idea, and maybe just in one sentence, what the situation was a year ago or 2 years ago, how far, the mandating and all that went in your country or your state.
Well, I'm from Washington State, Seattle area, and they were very, very strict here. And it actually went into where I had to make a decision with my job, and we were down to just maybe even a week or two of whether I was going to comply and get fully vaccinated or quit my job, because it was going to be mandated if the federal mandating went through that in order for me to keep a job that I've had for 16, 17 years, that I was going to have to do this. And I was against getting vaxxed from the very beginning. And I love that the truth is coming out now, but it's also triggering a lot of stuff. Just like you said, it's like, we knew this in the very beginning. So it's kind of just a weird phenomenon, kind of sifting through that again, where everybody is that wants to know the truth is catching up to where we were in the very beginning.
Well, yeah, it's the bifurcation happened. Yeah. So if you've been following me for about 10 years or so, I've been predicting this bifurcation, this split in reality with those two different ways of perceiving reality. And this is very relevant right now. Yeah, obviously there's aspects of social media and data presentation, data or information retrieval. So if we have certain types of cookies on our computers or phones, we will only get the echo chamber of what we have been looking at, right? So someone who, kind of has been critical about the vaccines will only see articles that support that. And someone who has been, compliant and conformist and didn't, really see anything wrong with this will only see news or posts that confirm that. It's very important to understand if we want to understand why some people have such a different perception of reality.
Yeah.
Cindy, you mentioned that there was enormous pressure to just keep your job, and you were coerced into, I suppose, taking the vaccine just so that you could keep your job. How far did this go in your state? What about customers? What about people? What about streets, restaurants? How was that like just a year ago?
Well, I worked in a grocery store, so we, of course, were one of the establishments that stayed open and were incredibly busy because of all of the closures and restaurants and people staying home and whatnot. And it was a very interesting time for people. You could see the polarization in the people in the store. Most people would comply and wear the masks, but there were a few rebels that just would not do it, and there were almost outbreaks in the store of verbal assaults at each other, and it was quite surreal, actually.
Yeah, this is the scariest part, right? How people started to attack each other.
Yes, yes. And
you guys had all your restaurants were closed, or how did this go? I suppose there was a face mask mandates in Washington State.
oh yes, yes. And even now, if you go to any medical establishment, you have to wear a mask in.
Did you guys have vaccine passports or something on your phone or anything like that?
Once they started opening things again, if you had a vaccine card, you had to show it in certain areas, certain restaurants. I remember my grandson was visiting, and they were going to Mariners or Seahawks game, the big professional, I think it was the Seahawks, a football game. And he was from Arizona. He was 17, and he had to get tested to get in the game.
Oh, wow. So they did it right there on site.
Yeah. Yep. It was.
And what's it like right now? You said you still have to wear face masks for medical establishments. You mean like doctors' offices and hospitals?
Yeah, doctors' offices, dentist office. I mean, obviously they're going to work on your teeth, but yeah, any medical establishment, you still have to wear a mask.
What about government buildings?
That I don't know. I try to stay away from those.
All right, so yeah, so enormous pressure, and even though it's sometimes less than a year ago, it's almost difficult to remember.
Yeah.
And what's your perception, like people's sort of willingness to even go into dialogue about COVID and the vaccines. Did you have ostracizing you or excluding you or something like that?
The most vivid remembrance I have of it was when I actually did have a doctor's appointment, and I got and they ask you before you go in, and this was during COVID, have you been vaccinated? And I had not. And I was so vac shamed by my doctor that I will never ever set foot in that office again. And it was really surreal having a medical professional approach me in that way. I won't say attack, but he was very, questioning why haven't you gotten vaccinated? Do you have any questions I can answer for you? Do you understand, how important it is? And and I just kept saying that over and over. I said, well, I just don't feel like there's enough information about it. I think there's a lot of pressure, just dialogue back on the reasons why I haven't. And they were true. There's just not enough information for me to put that in my body. And I actually felt that I got less care because of that.
Okay.
Which was interesting also. And I just remember walking out of there feeling like, wow.
So my doctor, he asked me how I feel about the vaccines. That was before they came on the market. And I looked at him and I said, my doctor, he knows me really well. Like I don't really go to a doctor very often. I need a prescription for a blood panel once every 2 years. And I said, well, I'm going to take my placebo chances. And then he asked me if I would volunteer to sit in his waiting room and just talk about self-healing all day long. I actually just found out that he retired a year and a half ago. So that was a good doctor, guys. That was a good doctor. He could not stand it. He could not conform. But anyhow,
that's
yeah.
awesome. There are
I
very
have been vax shamed, anti-vax or vax shamed 20 years ago already. Okay, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I am, as you guys know, a scientist and I can read studies. And there were certain vaccines where I'm like, no way, Jose, I'm not putting this in me or my kids. Yeah, so I know what that feels like. Thank you for sharing, Cindy.
Yes.
What were some of your guys' experiences? And how is the situation for you guys right now where you're at? We have Australia here, we have Canada here, we have other states here, we have New Zealand here. Guys, how is it where you are at? What's the current state where you are at? Can you guys travel? Can everybody travel into any country? Can anybody come into your country? Do you know? I know that the United States still has a ban for non-vaccinated foreigners, I think until April 1st or 23rd, I'm not sure. Yeah, so the current state, and Cindy, oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
I'm just trying to Google it for Canada, and I'm not sure, but the only thing that I'm aware of is if I go to the doctor or the hospital, I have to put a mask on. But I think the rule is here that the medical group can't ask us about our vaccination status.
Okay. Well, that surprises me in Canada because, the efforts to digitize ID have been you know, sort of 2-3 steps ahead of the United States. Now, the United States is quite resilient in regards to digital IT compared to Europe. But it surprises me that there is a law in that you guys have a law where they can't ask you about your vaccine status. It's actually against the Constitution in the United States, and yet the CDC has a tracking system for non-vaccinated in the United States. So I don't know if you're sure about this, what it's like in your country. It doesn't matter whether you vaccinated or not. I don't want you, you know, to feel excluded here. It just so happens that there is a lot of non-vaccinated individuals here in the sacred self-healing community, and so it's not representative of our average in our population. We currently have a total of 5.8 billion vaccinated people on this planet. The actual statistics are tricky to come by. I did some research. There was just a study, like a meta study published here in the United States yesterday, a comparison study between the NIH, the CDC, and I think a life insurance company. And they found out that the compliance rate here in the United States is roughly 77%. So there's 23 to 25% of unvaccinated people here in the United States. Now, my home country, Iceland, the compliance rate is 98%. Most of Europe is anywhere between 92 and 96%. Canada is also, I think, 98%. Not sure about New Zealand. Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of an idea what we're dealing with. So obviously this aftermath discussion is supposed to be informal, you know, neutral as possible, and also preventative. Yeah, so it should, you know, you be vaccinated and you do not know anybody, or you know, you personally don't have experience or aren't experiencing any adverse vaccine reactions, then you know, just see this maybe as you know, info. Okay, if you have had adverse vaccine reactions, and this can be helpful for you, or maybe you know someone who does. We're going to go through, you know, what these adverse vaccine reactions can be here in a minute. Okay, so you can enter Australia if you're not vaccinated, but can you go to, like, well, tennis matches? Can you go to public gatherings?
Yes, Jona. They've dropped. Yeah, they've dropped. I'm Julianne. I'm from North Queensland, Australia, where we weren't hit as hard with all the vaccine rules and regulations like the southern states, especially Melbourne. I think Melbourne was one of the most locked down cities in the world.
Yeah, and for really prolonged amount of times, right? Like 6 months or 8 months. Yeah.
Longer than that, I think. I think it all up that. Wow. I think it was around.
But you guys did have curfews. You had a 5-mile rule, right? You couldn't leave your house. Yeah. You couldn't take your dogs out.
That's right. And we also did have an app that we were supposed to download on the phone, which was like a tracking. Right. The government did say it was for if somebody had COVID and you went to the same shopping centre, they could send out a warning. But apparently, it was a huge failure. But
it was a huge failure as far as preventing COVID is concerned, but not as far as collecting data and implementing those tracking and tracing apps on the phone.
Oh yeah, contact tracing. I think that did work in the beginning, but as far as I think people being notified, I'm not too sure how that went.
Yeah, for prevention purposes, COVID couldn't be prevented. That's I think we all agree on this.
Yeah.
No, but the implementation of tracing software on your devices. That has succeeded. So for everything that is coming now from here on, okay, that's relevant. It's relevant how far this went in your country, okay? Just on a side note, because there's other things that are coming now. They have nothing to do with vaccines or pathogens. They have to do with digital ID and the control social rating systems. You know, that's all been predicted, you know, forever, and looked at it as a conspiracy theory. This is now happening, guys. Okay, latest in August. And some of the countries say it'll go faster and it'll be more persuasive because, you know, they already have these things and they won't even know that. But it's going. It's going.
Yes, well, here
do
we
you
also
know people?
Oh, sorry.
You're a doctor of acupuncture and you see a lot of people. Did you experience? Let's start with COVID. Did you experience severe cases of COVID among your patients, Julianne?
I knew people who had cases of COVID that seemed to be, I think I know a couple of people that have had long COVID. I have had people that have suffered from COVID. I mean, some people are describing it as a worst thing that they've ever endured for a week or two when they've been really, really ill. Yeah.
What's your experience right now? Did you have COVID?
I am not sure whether I have had COVID. I had times where my son got really ill, then I got ill. I don't know whether it was COVID.
Do people in your environment, family and so forth, that they have COVID? I mean, is it like sort of the like a normal thing? Haven't had COVID?
Around me, yes, a lot of people have had COVID and been tested positive for COVID. I never tested positive for COVID. I did have a while ago, I had a really high temperature. Don't know what it was. My son had it as well.
Do you know, or have you seen any patients that have had or still dealing with adverse vaccine reactions?
Yes, I do know people that have had adverse reactions, and myself being one of them, because I am an acupuncturist and registered with APRA. We were basically told to have the vaccine or lose your
or you have to give up your business. Yes,
that's right. And I got it put off for a while. I had a very sympathetic doctor who also didn't agree. Luckily for me, he didn't agree with the vaccination. That doctor has since left because he had 2 vaccines but was refusing to have the 3rd, and he actually told me that he was going to refuse to have the 3rd vaccine and go to find another job because he could no longer work as a doctor anymore. And you know, to hear that from your own doctor, well, I was really lucky, and there was another doctor at the surgery nearby where I go. He also was sympathetic. Tried to give me 2-week. The longest he could give me was 2-week
extensions and stuff.
Extensions, yeah, to not have the vaccine. So after my first vaccine, I had a severe reaction. I was really ill for 3 weeks, but it was good for me in a way because I self-medicated with herbs and different things so I could find out what really worked for me. And I
that's
also,
interesting. Can you contribute what you found out when we get to the part for the vaccine adverse responses, the detox protocol?
yeah, I've got some, and I've also been able to talk with other practitioners as well. I'm a herbal medicine doctor that I know, and so I had such a severe reaction, and I thought, there's no way knowing I'm getting the next. Well, I waited, yeah, 6 months really to try to get my body back into.
How many jabs did you have to take?
I had 2, so I waited. So my doctor actually helped me not have that second jab to just because of the reaction that I had.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
so this will be interesting for you.
That had adverse reactions to even, well, I suppose I couldn't really say it, but there have been deaths related, and I do know people that have had friends that have died or had brain hemorrhages or whatever that were supposedly healthy. I can't speak to that because I don't know their medical history. But it all seems like there's a lot of these stories, and they're from people that are close to me, and that they're close relatives or close friends. So, and those people don't get vaccinated. So because of the scare from their families, they're refusing to get any more vaccines.
Have you experienced shaming or exclusion among friends, family, anything like that?
Yes, yes. Even to the point where family members wouldn't come and visit me or want anything to do with me.
Even though you're jabbed, but not.
Well, after I got jabbed, the first jab, yeah. My mum was one of those people that wanted nothing to do with me and my son. And my son had.
Julian, that would have been your chance. Sorry for
yes,
this.
I know.
That's a personal. That's a personal thing.
My mum was like really angry at me for not getting my son vaccinated. My son was shamed at school because a couple of his friends had elderly grandparents and whatnot, and those children got vaccinated, and my son was shamed at school. Oh, look, you haven't had the vaccine. And actually, all those boys, my son's reply to them was, well, you've all had COVID and you've all been vaccinated, and I haven't had COVID yet, because he hadn't been sick. And for whatever reason, he didn't catch COVID when that went through his classroom. Whether he caught it later or not.
With kids, it's hard to tell because they barely have any symptoms. They're very asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else who experienced shaming or exclusion from family members, or, I mean, either way, just based on vaccination status? I have severely. Interestingly, I have 2 parts of my family, and one part was completely shaming and excluding, and the other part was completely welcoming and reassuring. Okay, so you guys haven't. Anybody experienced vax shaming, either for being vaccinated or for not being vaccinated? Yeah, I'm surprised. Okay, so, well, maybe you just don't, you're not ready to share yet. Okay, so the current state, I don't even know if I ever, oh yeah, I did write this down. So the current state, and this is based on studies, and I really ran out of time citing all those studies, guys. I have all these studies in the forum, but here are some conclusions, are already accepted. Now, what do I call accepted? Accepted, I call when even the CDC, which is the official American clinical sort of research government agency, okay, has these studies on their website and they're admitting to it. Okay, so there is no doubt anymore. I think there's over 100 studies showing this, that masks don't work. to prevent transmission. Masks can only help to reduce, when a person is sick, reduce their spread by like 18 or something, but it does not protect you from contracting anything. The COVID vaccine efficacy, meaning the risk-benefit analysis, if you look back on April 20, I pointed at the flaws in those risk-benefit studies and how they're mixing up things, and how I suspect that they do this on purpose because there really wasn't any studies yet. That has, clearly been shown. So the vaccine does not prevent transmission. So there is no difference between how the disease, the corona, SARS-CoV-2 infection works with you. It does not prevent hospitalization, and it does not prevent, severe illness. Okay, so literally no effect. There are studies out there still circulating, not on the official websites anymore, that boast about how many lives have been saved with the vaccine, and that is statistical atrocities, okay, because that is not true. It cannot be proven that the vaccine saved one single life. As a matter of fact, the studies that are out there right now, since a year and a half, okay, we done a webinar where I showed these studies to you, and was that July 21, I think, are clearly showing that the immune system gets affected by the vaccine in a way that it can induce so what they call vaccine-induced immune deficiency. In other words, the very thing that I predicted from day one, namely that the vaccine will, has maybe a sort of an immune boosting effect of now down to 2 months, but reduces your ability to ward off pulmonary pathogens drastically. So you get sicker, okay, down the road from just normal infections. Also cleared up is the natural immunity, which was also, for whatever reason, nobody knows, in question. It is now clear that natural immunity is more effective than the vaccine, which is great because most of us have had COVID, and therefore we are basically naturally vaccinated already. Very disturbing, and also something that I predicted, but is now slowly coming, into the order, becoming subject to research studies, is the efficacy of lockdown. So right now here in the United States, the estimate is that 200,000 people died from the lockdowns, guys. All right, that's more people than, were saved by the lockdowns, which obviously is a bit of a problem. School closures did not prevent transmission. On the contrary, it created horrendous consequences for our children. As most of you know, in response to the pandemic, I started my own school in May 2020, Master Tree Academy, to prevent my own child and his friends from having to suffer the consequences of, the switch to virtual schools and like real chaotic situations in regards to school-aged children. Very, very sad. The studies that I posted in the forum and everywhere showed this clearly. I mean, there's a drop in IQ, there's a drop in emotional regulation, there's an increase in autism, there's a massive increase in suicidal ideation, so suicide risk in especially teenage girls, the 13-year-olds, so they were 10 at the time when the pandemic started. There is, issues with class management. There's a lot of kids that dropped out, that just not going to school at all, not even homeschooling. And one really, really disturbing thing that I anticipated as, social emotional professional, is that children's perception, of what other people feel and what they say, reduced drastically because of the face masks. Okay, so they could not really connect the body language or the facial expression with the words, and that has reduced their overall literacy and emotional literacy. It's very sad. It's very, very tricky. I'm dealing with this in my school every day. And we, to this day, do not go by age when we assign them to grades. We have to do individualized assessments and tailored education to mitigate all these consequences. And that doesn't even, include issues with domestic violence. 26% of all women who lost their job are not going back into the job market. Is very disturbing, et cetera, et cetera. Then compliance rates, I've already mentioned. So the compliance rates overall is very high. Interestingly, the entire continent of Africa has almost, I think, only 8% compliance rate, very low. India has a high compliance rate, 78%, I think. Don't quote me, please. But they stopped taking the vaccine about a year and a half ago. And the interesting studies are now coming out of Israel, because Israel was one of the first that got special treatment by Pfizer. They started the vaccine rollout in December 2020, and basically have the largest cohort, also like a 98 or 99% compliance rate. The economic scope, well, we are now experiencing the economic scope of the trillions of dollars that were printed in our societies to bail out or to continue consumerism throughout the pandemic. We're seeing the bank crashes now, and all that is also predicted. Social scope is at this point still a bit of a question mark, because people have not faced it yet. So Cindy, you said the truth is coming out. For me, the truth is always out, but like there is a really high sort of resilience toward actually facing that. So it is and will be interesting from a sociological point of view how this develops, whether we're going to see something like revolts and revolutions. Remember the convoy in Canada last year. We're having street fights on a daily basis in France, and protests all around the world for different reasons. But there obviously is a rift in our societies, and this also reflects in the political environment. Yeah.
I have to add too that my faith in the CDC and our health industry has been pretty much decimated, which is not a bad thing, honestly, because that has taught me that my inner guidance and my instincts were right on. And before I listen to any establishment where my health is concerned, it goes I don't even look at it now.
Well, it's a paradigm shift, I mean, I mean, I don't want to go into conspiracy theories here, but the problem is that if we truly believe that the government have our best interest in mind, okay, then the pandemic surely was a bit of a shock to the system. If you have been thinking for yourself and observing for yourself in the last 20, 30, 40 years, you could find plenty of evidence that that is not the case. Now, that said, I don't necessarily want to propagate here that the government is against its population. That doesn't make any sense. There's an ignorance there and also lack of education for the most part. But that does not prevent them from having, needing to be accountable. Okay, so the food industry, the oil industry, and also the administrational, but not just in regards to the pandemic, any kind of mandates and so forth, have become more totalitarian over the years and never really been in the interest of the population. Yeah, so I'm just saying, okay, welcome to seeing things for yourself and listening to your inner guidance and thinking for yourself, because this is what sacred self-healing is all about. Yeah, whatever conclusion we're coming to, that's, up to you guys. But the whole point is that you can't externalize your power to anything. Not the government either. All right, externalization of power is externalization of power. Doesn't matter, what you externalize it to. The mental health scope of the pandemic response is devastating, guys. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to tell you. You know that this is our field. It's I mean, it's now estimated here in the United States that 60% of the population either suffer from anxiety, clinical anxiety, or depression. Okay, so that's bad. Okay, that doesn't even count, the injustice, the upset, and the cognitive dissonances about the pandemic response, about the vaccines, etc. So here, just real quick, just so that we keep all this together here without going off too much into emotions, like the current paradox. Okay, the current paradoxes that we have in the media, and if you're not watching or reading the news, you may be not aware of this, but highly controversial and discussed and very wishy-washy is the discussion about the origin of the virus. You've heard me say that the virus carries all signs of man-made composition. Okay, the FBI has admitted that the CDC and the NIH have funded gain-of-function research in the Wuhan lab. There is also documentation that shows that the virus was actually developed in the United States and then outsourced to the Wuhan lab. None of that is, really admitted by anybody other than the FBI, and still hotly discussed. So that's the state of that. There is a $400 million fee that Dr. Fauci received from Moderna for the for what actually? So there is a little bit of an issue here with the funding, because they call it royalties. Apparently the Moderna vaccine was already developed before SARS-CoV-2 broke out here. Those are things that I know for a fact, because a lot of the information that I had before, the vaccines were even on the market about the mRNA vaccine was based on that research. The tricky part about this is, and I wonder how long that takes, is that the NIH, the National Health Institute, is funded by tax money. So in other words, Pfizer and Moderna together, I think they've had $500 billion revenue in these last 2 years from the vaccines. And their research is funded by the NIH. Nobody disputes that. Yeah, so taxpayer money. And now there's, and now we have to pay for the vaccines, whether you like them or not, to Pfizer, Moderna. And Fauci gets $400 million royalties. That's not, something ain't right there, guys. I mean, conspiracy or not. It's just like the stuff that is really open, out in the open. And if somebody doesn't see that, okay, then that has to do with not wanting to see it. Okay, so how this is going to develop, and if there's going to be someone finally, taking responsibility, or if they, prosecute Fauci and, all the heads, the heads of the government agencies that promoted the mandates and the vaccines with it, is going to, pretty visible here, because this is going to go on for the next year, and watch it unfold. So there's an accountability issue, which very much reminds me of the sort of post-Nazi, post-Hitler era in Germany, where everybody is just pointing fingers, and then eventually it just sort of runs out because everybody has amnesia. Yeah, then another, and this is obviously a big part of the fears that are, floating around right now as sort of the free-floating anxiety, is the sudden deaths. The sudden deaths, the myocarditis, pericarditis, and stroke incidents as a response to the vaccine or not. So the life insurance companies are very clear about this, very clear. They all agree, guys. This is absolutely out of question for life insurance companies, because they're the ones that have to pay. And the latest studies there show, following statistical correlation, with every jab, your chance of developing myocarditis, pericarditis, stroke, or a radically aggressive cancer increases by 7%. That is coming from the life insurance companies. That is what they're seeing. Yeah, so the sudden death syndrome, yeah, this is the death without an apparent cause, and absolutely not COVID related whatsoever, is a syndrome, which means it's not just a few people. It is possible that somebody dies, suddenly without any apparent cause, just as much as it is possible that people die of spontaneous combustion, which is also true, but it's extremely rare. Okay, this has now become a public discussion because there are so many people who just drop dead, and so many people who drop dead during the thing that they were doing, like be it in front of rolling camera or during games. So whenever there is an increase of adrenaline in the system, something appears to get triggered. This is no joke. Okay, so you're gonna see this. There's even a hashtag sudden deaths. The latest study coming from Israel, that's from yesterday, clearly shows that there is no connection between myocarditis and pericarditis, which is the heart muscle inflammation and the heart lining inflammation, that they're linked to COVID or long COVID. This is sort of the current narrative still, that all these weird, here's sort of, aggressive cancer, stroke, and myocarditis deaths are linked, or that they're after mass of COVID is now disproven. Yeah, it's a study from Israel from yesterday. So it's clear that we're dealing with, a very, very obvious increase in these these kind of diseases that lead to death, even in children, even in you know, extremely young cohorts of children, which is practically unspoken of. It's never happened before that, you know, a 1-year-old has a heart attack for no reason, like without any comorbidities or any prior indication. Yeah, so here's a lot of stuff going on right now, because there still is the narrative that the sudden deaths can't be ignored. There's something like 40,000 now, and that's just the reported ones. It is not really admitted yet that this is linked to the vaccines, but it's very likely. Also very disturbing is the studies that show a 38% increase in stillbirths, and I think it was 47% drop in fertility in both male and female since the uptake of the vaccines. So again, here's something that I predicted 3 years ago. The shedding question, guys, is reignited, and I hate to tell you, but the shedding is real, and the spike protein. So I'm going to go a little bit, just a little bit, guys, into the science of what's actually happening when you take a vaccine, because we now have enough data. We now have visualizations. We can see it under the electron microscope. It's very obvious what is occurring with the mRNA COVID vaccine. But the big question always was, can someone who's vaccinated, who becomes a sort of a factory for spike protein, shed, you know, transfer the spike protein to an unvaccinated person? And the answer is yes. The spike protein is found in pretty much all organs, including the testicles. In some men, it even replaces all sperm in the uterus. Everywhere they said that it wouldn't be, it's everywhere. Okay, it's very disturbing, guys. And the shedding can happen through sex, through, you know, just proximity, breathing the air, you know, like shedding as in like shedding from the skin. This is not good news. Okay, which means that spike protein detox, yeah, whether it is from, you know, actually having COVID, having long COVID, haven't had a vaccine, or having been together with vaccinated people who shed spike protein, this is basically important for all of us. Yeah, because you know what happens when we have COVID, which is similar to what happens when you get the vaccine, is that the virus basically implants its own DNA and makes your alters your cells, your organelles to produce the spike protein. And it is now proven that the exact same thing happens with the vaccine. I will not speculate why that is the case. Okay, I've already made statements about that. But the point here is that everything they said that the vaccine would not do, as in, you know, altering your genes or anything like that, is now proven that it does. So the vaccine, and this is science, guys, turns your body into a spike protein factory, and it accumulates in all areas, in all organelles in your body, but especially in the endothelium and the vascular system, which is why, you know, the myocarditis, especially also pericarditis, and the blood clotting is so prevalent. This is extremely important to understand. These nanoparticles from the vaccine, they are everywhere in the body. But the good news is we can do things about this. Okay. The last 2 points here, you know, public health strategies, digital ID, you know, basically as the sort of precursor for a social rating system as it already exists in China. Guys, this is not a conspiracy theory. You know, I'm from IT. I know it's there. I know how easy it is to switch from one to the other. It's already there, guys. The same with digital currencies. Oh my God, yes, yeah, the dollar is going to become a digital dollar, a cryptocurrency. Oh no, also predicted. And how do I know this? Because this week, no, actually it was last week, the Federal Reserve Bank announced, did you guys see it? Announced that they are now coming out in July. They're going into beta testing in June. They've asked for people to volunteer for their digital instant payment system, which uses the blockchain, which is the preparation for switching the Federal Reserve dollar paper notes into a crypto dollar to save the banking system and maintain control. These are all things, guys. I've been warning you about this. I've been telling you this for years, okay? And it is there now. And it means that Cindy said earlier, that we more than ever need to think for ourselves. We need to perceive for ourselves. This is not in our interest, okay? There is nobody in his right mind, okay, who wants to be told what you can buy, where you can go, how far you can leave your house, when you're allowed to have internet or TV, or when you're allowed to buy a certain consumer goods, or whatever, what school or what places you can go to. There's nobody who would agree to such a restriction of freedom, and that is going on right now, okay? The only way to mitigate that is to recognize that we as the people, if you will, no matter where we are at, that we actually have the power, because we are the consumers, guys. We are the ones that finance, that fund the whole thing. So it is on us. It is on us as individuals and the whole to not support that under no circumstances. The WHO has come out with a bill that signs over the autocracy of each country. Like, in other words, that countries aren't even able anymore to make their own decisions about, for example, pandemics, to sign it over to the WHO. There is massive shit going on. Okay, yeah. So sorry for being the spreader here of these realities. Okay, but that's, if you're not aware of this, then you need to, I don't know, change the cookies on your computer, or inform yourself. I'll give you resources. Yeah, you can go to the forum, the Sacred Self-Healing Forum, and there are so many studies, so many links. Yeah, you'll find the right answers if you just do a little bit surface research. Yeah, so media censoring, mis and disinformation, guys, is in full swing. Full swing. Accountability, yeah, from the NIH, CDC, FDA, we talked about this, like bringing, those vaccines on the market without prior testing, with expedited processes that promise them no liabilities, and mandating it, okay, mandating the vaccine. And this is, unheard of. Okay, the role of corporations is clear, not just the pharmaceutical industry. There's a lot of other corporations that get benefited from the pandemic, the lockdowns, the face masks, and the disinformation. We now know that Twitter and Facebook were forced by the government to censor information coming from medical doctors, expert scientists, and other people who advocated early treatment. Early treatment was prohibited, guys. I don't know if you realize this, but doctors were not allowed to treat COVID. Okay, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine was, before the pandemic even started, okay, was recommended by the US military and the CDC as countermeasure to the SARS virus. I mean, this is like no kidding stuff. Okay, the role of the media and politicians and scientists and medical doctors, some of them were coerced, some of them were threatened, some of them lost their license, some of them were removed from the panels and their credentials were taken away. I mean, there's a reinstatement going on right now, but I'm telling you, this is massive. This is massive, the censoring and disinformation out there. And it's all open. You just have to look. It's nobody says it's not true. Ever wondered about it? It's just being sort of fogged up with other things, or new events like the Ukraine war or the bank failures or whatever, that are supposed to keep us in this constant state of free-floating anxiety, because the free-floating anxiety, remember, is one of the major precursors and prerequisites for mass hypnosis. The role of the US military, DARPA, well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist because I've seen those papers and I've seen the research and I know the role of the DARPA in, biowarfare and how these things go. So, yeah, I don't want to further go into this. Okay, let's talk about what we can do and how we can even sort of identify that there are adverse reactions to spike protein. Let's just really focus on the spike protein, whether you produce spike protein based on the jabs that you had, or because you have COVID right now, or you have forms of long COVID. By the way, a study yesterday, also from the life insurances, calculated the risk of you developing long COVID. I'm laughing because, basically it says everybody will, in the course of our lives, develop long COVID at some point because of the circulating spike protein. Yeah, so obviously if you're vaccinated, you have a lot more in your system because your system produces your spike protein factory. Okay, if you've had COVID and this has nothing to do with the transmission of the disease. This has to do with what it does to your immune system. Yeah, and how it actually reduces your immune system, toward, other like pulmonary diseases and heart diseases and cancers. Yeah, so on a long enough timeline, and I'm laughing about it because on long enough, I mean, those statistics don't really help because, on a long enough timeline, we're all going to die from something. Yeah, eventually we all going to die. So what is the pathogenesis here? My tip for you is, and especially for the treatment protocols, the detox protocol, I summarized it for you because I know that some of you have a hard time reading this, okay? Is when you look at the pathogenesis, meaning the symptoms, okay? What do we have here? Here, okay. What they now call the post-vaccine syndrome. Then you'll see obviously the myocarditis, pericarditis, and stroke, hemorrhage, blood clotting. But there is one thing, and I really want to make everybody aware of this, that is even trickier, and that is the acceleration of cancer growth. So this is something that goes all the way back to high vibratory living and high vibratory diet, and if you haven't already, it really is a good idea to start eating healthier. Not only is it also proven that processed foods increase the incidence of cancer and immune deficiencies, but it also is very obvious that if we're not proactive, if we're not actually, giving our body extras now, and we're going to look at these extras, yeah, like antioxidants and, substances, that nutrients, micronutrients that our body really needs to deal with this increased exposure, okay? Then you know, we just have elevated risks now, just due to the fact that we just went through the pandemic and the vaccine issue. Okay, so that's that's it. Yes, Guillain-Barré syndrome, shingles is very, very, oh, where do I have it here? Hang on. Yeah, here's the pathogenesis. Obviously, there's acute immediate reactions, myocarditis, spike protein-induced metabolic aberrations, inflammatory response is reduced, so or it's like a hyperreaction, so the body like an autoimmune response, all kinds of syndromes. Here is, you know, I was going to show you this, but you know, it's really boring for most of you. One of the things that I was looking at, I was at a lecture of someone who's in Alzheimer's research, and you know, the amyloid prions, that's really like kind of bad on top of everything, because really what it does is it begins to, you know, destroy your brain cells and actually prepare you for early onset of dementia. So these kind of things are not fun, guys. Yeah. So without wanting to scare you, I don't want to scare you. I want to make you guys more, you know, responsive to this and not just ignore this. Okay, do not ignore it. Now, anything immune dysregulation, you know, thrombosis, yeah, I don't even know what to say. Yeah, clotting and so forth, all that. Here the list goes on, guys. Bell's palsy, very common. There's your Guillain-Barré syndrome, myelitis. I mean, yeah, even depression, tinnitus also. Oh yeah, here T-cell lymphoma, very common. You know, blood cancers. Now all of a sudden that used to be extremely, extremely rare. Seizures. Yeah, guys. So that's the reality out there. Okay. Let's look at the detox protocols real quick. This is a summary. Please look at the FLCCI recovery protocol. It's in the Secrets of Healing Forum, you know, for 2 years or 3 years already. Here, this is created by I don't know how many doctors now, you know, 1,600 doctors, clinical doctors, who have advocated for, yes, all kinds of neurological dysfunction, who have been advocating for treatment of COVID rather than just vaccinating. And it's very detailed. And, you know, you have all these resources and you can download the PDF from them, you know, for the exact doses and how often and so forth. But here is basically what we need, and this is in the order of their importance, meaning, you know, like the priority levels for the detox. Ivermectin, clear. I think there's 500 studies now showing this, like literally proving this. Okay, that it reduces the spike protein in your system. Nattokinase. Okay, this is a new study. This is new studies from the last 3 months. Or 6 months. Very, very easy to get, cheap. It's an enzyme. It's very cool, the research that is there, and very good news. Vitamin D, NAC, magnesium, vitamin C, lysosomal, melatonin, sunlight, hydroxychloroquine, water, herbal teas, dandelion leaf and root, chaga, turkey tail, and any antioxidant that you know of, you know, like garlic, curcumin, oregano oil. Okay, these are all, they have slightly different immune boosting or free radical catching properties, but you know, anything, you know, yarrow tea, yes, and lots of teas and stuff. But this is like the water and tea is really down here in the not so important as this third line treatment. It's really ivermectin, nattokinase, vitamin D, guys, and NAC and magnesium, yeah, and vitamin C just to increase your immune system. But these are the ones that I've been doing, minus the ivermectin, even though I had COVID. But it was so mild, I didn't really need any. I didn't take any meds during my COVID. And sunlight, this is your best insurance here, and it can take the spike protein out of your system. Now, if you are, you know, let's say married or work with someone and you have constant exposure, it's basically a constant detox that you have to make if you want to counteract this. Yes. Yeah, charcoal, papaya, fennel, peppermint, ginger, obviously all good stuff, all and you know, part of the antioxidant and herbal remedy family, and wonderful, but you know, not enough. Okay, this is here. This is the stuff that you need, and it's easy and it's cheap, and it's in some of your countries still hard to get ivermectin, nattokinase, you can get that everywhere. Vitamin D, NAC, you can get that everywhere. Magnesium, vitamin C. Okay, so take this seriously. Take it seriously. Some of the discussions that we had, I think it was in our last one here. Oops, let me remove this. Does the virus, you know, I wanted to revisit them just real quick here for a few minutes. Does the virus actually exist, and what its origin and what are the variants? Okay, so the virus that, yeah, does exist, that's correct. The origin still discussed, as we've already talked about. And what are the variants? Well, the variants are no longer relevant, because with Omicron, they have become less and less infectious, or the higher infection rate, but you know, less severely. There are studies that show that, you know, the variants are linked to vaccine uptake and so forth, but that's like an old discussion now, because nobody really cares anymore. What is the disease caused by? What makes us sick? Well, the answer to that today is, so this is the revisited questions from last time, guys. So this is now answerable. What makes us sick is the spike protein. Okay. Are COVID tests reliable? What is the viral load? Is there viral? You know, that's well, you know, remember this was in 21. COVID tests were not reliable. It was a complete scam. That they did show you, you know, that, you know, if you had a full-on COVID infection, but you know, it didn't really help preventing anything from a statistical point of view. How deadly is COVID? Who's at risk? Okay, COVID has a mortality rate, you know, and we don't know for sure yet, but the initial predicted mortality rate of COVID was 0.03%. It's still what the statisticians work with. Okay, so slightly higher than the flu. Since there was barely any flu deaths during the pandemic year, yeah, glutathione, we already talked about that last time. That was also good for prevention, and, you know, for the graphene that's in there. Can the pandemic be stopped? No, it cannot be stopped. So we've already went through this. Is the vaccine safe? No. Does the vaccine change DNA? Yes. Can vaccine stop the pandemic? No, especially not during a pandemic. Can vaccinated people get COVID? Yes. Do vaccines cause virus mutations? Yes. All that is proven now. What treatments are there? What are the what treatments are approved? Okay, no treatments were approved And yes, it's still the same treatments, FLCC plus, wonderful protocols for that. Can we self-heal COVID? Yes. What's new in the research? I just presented that. What can I do for prevention? Supplements, diet, we just talked about it. Are there side effects of the vaccine? Yes, I think 1,600. What is spike protein? We talked about this in the previous webinars. No longer really interesting. All you need to know is that it severely, impacts your system, especially your immune system and your blood circulation. What is long COVID? Can it be treated? Long COVID is basically, sort of a COVID-induced lower response of your immune system. And that means that you can have prolonged symptoms. Can it be treated? Yes, same protocol as the detox protocol. Can we eliminate the mRNA out of our bodies? No, not really. Really, the mRNA isn't the problem. It is the DNA that is leaking from those vaccines that is the problem. So just so you know, there's a DNA leakage, okay, in those vaccines. The mRNA is just a hull that just transports the DNA. So yes, we can eliminate it as good as we can with the protocol already talked about. Are the booster shots safe? No, it's the same stuff. Should children be vaccinated? Absolutely, 100% no. And nobody who still wants to have children. What is gain of function research? We talked about this. Are there scientific discussions? There weren't. Now there are. Why are there so many controversies? Censorship, disinformation, and massive corporation collusion and corruption with the governments. What role does the media play? We already discussed this. Yeah, here my protocol from April 2020. Pretty cool. Bryonia worked, but it's too mild. It's just like, some of the herbs. They're good in addition to everything else, but it's really the ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. It's so cheap and so easy, along with vitamin D. So nobody with vitamin D levels above 50 had any kind of severe response to COVID. That's why I recommended you guys to have, to double up and shoot for like 80 or 90 nanograms per millimole, I think it is. It's also less severe risk, or lower risk of myocarditis, and the spike protein literally gets eaten up by vitamin D. So stick with the vitamin D. Vitamin C is still the same thing. Drink tons of water, drink hot beverages. So this is when you actually have COVID. It's really important that you clean your nose and that you drink hot beverages. I explained it because it reduces the viral load. Yeah, obviously, there's, the sort of vibrational aspects, energetic aspects as well. We talked about all those, higher, lower vibrations, and that's really your guys' self-healing task, to keep your energy in a higher vibrational spectrum here. And the most important barrier for a higher vibrational spectrum is truth. So do not stick your head in the sand, guys. Look at truth, even if it's scary. It is scary as hell. Sorry for this word. It really is, and it's big things are going to come from this. It is not a truth that still needs to be discovered, guys. It is a truth that is already there, that has been there all along. Okay. That just really needs to be seen. And the bifurcation that we talked about in the beginning is the phenomenon. It is so that 20 or 80% of the population cannot see the truth, literally not able to see it. So I want all you guys to apply your energetic awareness and also your compassion, guys. It is not possible for people to see the truth. It's a different reality, okay? And it isn't until, you know, more people die and no babies are being born and our economic systems really fall apart, you know, that people will be able to see the truth. So in that, we're back to the beginning of all my talks, namely the confrontation with untruths. What is the purpose of that? Is this evil, dark forces or whatever? Yes, you could say so, but you know, evil, dark forces, they, in a nutshell, you know, serve a purpose here in this 3D reality, namely to lead us to making more conscious choices, to lead us to discernment, to lead us to choosing the light. Okay, and the only way to really inoculate yourself from that massive amount of control, guys, is to step into your self-healing journey and learn to think for yourself, learn to master your emotions, learn to master your will, and, you know, make more conscious choices, guys. Yeah, discernment of truth is the theme here for the next 10 years, and love and freedom who require truth, okay, they will die if truth is not seen by the majority of the population. So whatever it takes, guys, if it takes, you know, the failure of the banking system, the crash of the economy, you know, and all these sort of doomsday things, okay, then so be it. It is in our nature as humans, and our ego paradigm, that we do not react until we go through a crisis. The ideal, or, you know, the goal here as active self-healers is that we consciously choose to do this before the crisis hits us. So we can wait and sit it out, and it's going to hit you really hard, the truth, because the truth is there, okay? Or you can make some active steps and really step into, you know, your own, you know, higher consciousness. It's nothing mystical at all, okay? It's literally the mastering of your thinking, because 80% of your thoughts aren't even your own, the mastering of your emotions and the mastering of your choices. You have fantastic workshop recordings for that here within the Sacred Self-Healing community. I did nothing but that, training you guys in that last year. This year we're doing the workshop series, Adjusting to Change, where it's a bit more practical. Right now we're on the fourth part of mastering our relationships. I highly recommend the webinars from the last year, the workshop webinars with mastering thoughts, emotions, and choices, because that's what is needed to withstand this confrontation with untruth. And this ends here my little presentation. I know it's a lot to digest if this is all news to you, and maybe, you know, you think that I'm off here and there. This is totally okay, because from my perspective, you know, as someone who teaches discernment, I rather have you question me than your own perception. But please go, you know, then yourself, okay? Question me, question your perception, but not yourself, okay? Any more questions? Questions that weren't addressed, or that I maybe went over too fast? I'm going to display the detox protocol here, because every single question I received up front was about how to detox from spike or adverse vaccine reactions. Obviously, if you have severe issues, you're going to have to see a professional. There is a way to measure the spike protein in your system. It's a blood test. It's two blood values. It's the D dimer and the CRT values. Please, you know, text me or ask me exactly, you know, how you can see. There's lots of studies done. It's measurable. Yeah, so it's an overreaction of your immune system that the spike protein encourages, and therefore, you know, we see these inflammations in the organs, in the reproductive system, the replacement of organelles, and also fast-growing aggressive cancers. Yeah, any more questions or any additions? Any criticisms? How is all this sitting with you guys? Is this all news to you? Is this all stuff that you've already known? Give me a little bit of feedback. How do you feel about these things? Anybody?
Well, I just want to thank you for bringing all of this to the table again. It's really, especially these protocols that you've put up here. There's some things in there that I was not aware of, the nattokinase and some other things on there. That's really cool. But I do have to say, it does trigger anger in me, and I know not to go there. But you know, I'm not gonna lie, it makes me angry.
And where is that anger directed to?
I mean, I hate to say it, but it gets directed outward to other people that aren't seeing it. And I know you said to use compassion, and you know, I do as much as I can, but it makes me uneasy. I won't say like angry. It makes me uneasy.
Why the people? I mean, the people have been fooled. Okay, the people have been misinformed. The
Yes,
people,
absolutely.
so why are you angry at the people? They're like us. They just don't have that ability to see truth, if you will. It's a bit simplified, but you know, and maybe not the interest in discerning truth.
I don't know. I think it's the ratio of things. You need a certain amount of inertia to create real change, but you know, how do you do
No,
that?
you don't. No, you don't. You just have to wait till crisis hits. That's the ego paradigm. We are in an ego paradigm. We are.
Yes.
3D
Yes.
is a dualistic ego paradigm, and we've always known it.
Yes.
Okay. So the one thing that we need to remind ourselves of is whether we're going to wait till we're going to be forced to be doing something, or if we're going to do it out of our own insight and inner guidance. The big lesson learned here is what happens if we don't listen to our inner guidance.
Yes.
I feel that too, Jona. I often get this feeling inside me like, why did I go against myself? Why did I get the vaccine? On that day, it felt like I just went, you know what? I'm just going to see everything as rainbows and unicorns and get the vaccine and out vibrate it. And now I look back, I can see how it's that cognitive dissonance in me.
I mean, you learn something about yourself, and that the cognitive dissonance, guys, is what creates the energetic stress in you, is what creates the schisms in you, is what makes it impossible for you to see things. So you have to be aware of that, no matter how small or how big the topic is in your life. It's the trust in yourself. And I'm very, very sorry if, you know, I know that, you know, I see the chat here. You guys can't see it. There are people here who, for them, it's complete news. Okay, so let's not really go there, you know, and vilify other people who can't see that or who don't believe in that. Okay, there's a whole different task here. We don't need, like critical mass or anything is not needed. What we need to do, if we have the awareness, is to go into that place with ourselves and become a beacon of truth, not as some, blurring out, half truths, yeah, but as in like following our inner truth. It is the only way, guys, how you can prevent severe crisis. Severe crisis is now coming. Depending on where we are in the world, in different countries, for a shorter amount of time, and in other countries like the United States for a slightly longer amount of time. Because America has still, the United States still has to go through some fundamental collective shadow clearing that some of our other countries already went through. So no matter whether you believe in this or not, okay, remember these words. Stay conscious. Trust in your inner feeling. It is all these regrets and all these cognitive dissonances, guys, that trigger all your guys' unhealthy coping and the stuff that you can't forgive yourself for, that splits your soul. Yeah. Without truth, there is no freedom. Without truth, there is no love, period. So the goal is not waterfall and unicorns. The goal is truth, guys. That is the time that we are in. Understand it. Don't vilify it. Understand it. And then you know what you need to do, because it's always been there. You've known it. You know exactly, all of you, you know exactly what you need to do. But you don't want to look at it, and that is untruth. Don't look away, because that's going to hurt you. That's going to create, this soul split in you, and all sorts of karma. So whatever it is that you've done the last 3 years doesn't matter right now. This is a completely new beginning right now. Anything is possible. I wrote this, I talked about this. Yeah, I'm shouting it from the rooftops. Okay, this is a new beginning, and I mean it. Let everything go. Take the things that you've learned from the past, whichever lesson it was that you were taking from this. I've taken it on to have the knowing of that, and to like put it into like bite-sized little bits so that it's easier to digest. It's not easy to see these things, guys, and there's more to come. It doesn't need to scare us. Fear is below truth. When you're in fear, you cannot see truth. Remember this. When you're in anger, you cannot see truth. That's why I remind you guys of your empathy, of your compassion, of your forgiveness, and especially acceptance. Accept the things the way they are, so you can work with them. That's the only way to work with them. Okay? All right, everyone. I hope that you have more questions. That please feel free to criticize, to question anything. Okay? Just don't be still. Don't look the other way, because that's something that comes in my karma that I know for a fact, because my mother and my grandmother, they grew up in post-Nazi time, and my grandmother was there during the Nazi time in Germany. And I grew up with this awareness, how fast that can happen. Don't look the other way. You don't have to attack anyone. You don't have to vilify anyone. You just need to speak the obvious truth. That's all. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're probably going to have an 8th part in a year or so. Yeah, but please feel free to comment on this video if you're watching the recording. Thank you for being here live and for trusting me, you know, with conveying this kind of information, because it's not fun having to listen to that. But it is the reality that is out there, guys. Okay. So let's be strong together and look at truth together. Okay. Love you guys.